Good evening. Everyone ages. However, not everyone has a roadmap for planning the later years. Tonight, Veterans Voices will give you the tools you need to age with pride. Tonight's Shadow Box belongs to Joey Graves. At 17, Joey enlisted in the Army. His dream was being an FBI field agent. After completing basic, he spent a year in Korea and returned in March of 2005 to Fort Hood, Texas. He married his high school sweetheart before being deployed to Iraq. On July 25th of 2006, he lost his life when the 1st Platoon was ambushed on an escort mission outside of Baghdad. His family honors him as a soldier, a son, a husband, and a friend. They also honor other fallen heroes with Some Gave All, the Joey Graves Foundation. Thanks for tuning in to Veterans Voices. I'm Nathan Johnson. Veterans Voices is a monthly television show that explores important issues that affect the veterans community. We encourage you to participate in the conversation tonight. If you would like to ask a question, call us at 925-313-1170. Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email us veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. We would love to hear from you.
Good evening. I'm Erin Esquer, and this evening on Veterans Voices, we'll take a look at aging. Our panel of experts will examine how our needs change as we get older and the things that we can do to make sure that we age with pride. Noga Wellner Kessler is the Veterans Coordinator and Hospice Social Worker for Hospice of East Bay and veteran of the IDF Medical Corps. Debbie Toth is the President and CEO of Choice in Aging. Ladies, I'd like to welcome you to the show this evening.
Thank you.
So we'll start with the little round of questions here because you guys are both very knowledgeable with tonight's topic. And so we really want to get your wisdom. So we'll start with you, Miss Debbie Toth. What do you find can be the biggest challenges to aging for veterans?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think that aging is this long continuum that we talk about aging. But if we look at the fact we gained 3 decades of life expectancy last century that we haven't really planned for. So that's the first thing is like, how do you access the resources? When do you need them? Where are they? When I've been living in a world where I've had to question whether or not I trust the healthcare system. So there are all these potential barriers to accessing the healthcare and supports that you need, as well as this sort of sense of independence, fierce independence as a veteran that you can do these things on your own. And so being able to allow others to support you. And we don't have the greatest, most accessible healthcare system. So I think a lot of these factors play a part in how we manage aging and the barriers to them.
Yeah, you mentioned the healthcare piece, which obviously is huge for our veteran population and community. And I know, Miss Noga, I know you have a lot of insight into that too. What do you see as possible obstacles to care?
Absolutely. So I see poor health and perhaps the lack of knowledge about the resources and support that is available for veterans. And as Debbie has mentioned, the obstacles of perhaps uh, asking for, reaching out for help, issues that we'll probably talk a little bit more about isolation, perhaps from support system, and oftentimes service connected illnesses and disabilities that inhibit independence and ability to perhaps control things that have been controlled in day-to-day care, things like that, day-to-day activities.
Yeah. So, in addition to the medical concerns, are there other possible challenges for aging veterans? I know you guys mentioned a couple of things, even with regards to family members, being able to also access, different things on behalf of the veteran. What are some other challenges outside of that?
So one of the things that also Debbie started to mention, she was mentioning was as we age, perhaps because we're not able to do as much, we become isolated. Perhaps there's issues with sadness, loneliness, not being connected to family, community. So isolation is definitely one issue when not able to be as independent and able to be as active. So addressing those things for sure.
Yeah,
And access for caregivers, I would add to resources as well for caregivers to be able to provide support, but also to get respite themselves. Because
yeah,
I think ultimately, most of us, as we age, want to be able to age in our community on our terms, and that means that we have to accept some support into a space where we wouldn't have normally, and we have to have a caregiver or somebody who's going to go along that journey with us, and we have to trust them in that journey, and they have to be able to care for themselves. And where those resources are and how do we access them, that's not something that we know the same way that we know if we need childcare we call a preschool, like, so these are new things to have to navigate and learn about in that space. So I think you will have some resources at the end of today's show that will help people navigate that.
absolutely. Um, we do have a question from our audience, and I'm sure that either of you are probably knowledgeable enough to probably answer this, and as well as our fearless host Nathan Johnson on the nature of what you do for your 9 to 5. But we've got a question here: are all veterans eligible for VA medical care?
So well, they can all enroll, but some may have a share of cost. So definitely Nathan would be the expert in that. But there was a time where if you served, you were eligible. But now it's also based on the income and the years that you served. So there are factors. But Nathan, if you wanted to jump in on that.
Well, thanks, Noga. Yeah, Noga's absolutely correct. January 17th of 2003. It's an easy date for me to remember because it's the date I left for Iraq. The Secretary of VA said that there was now a means test for veterans to enroll in the VA healthcare system unless they met other criteria like having a service connected disability rating, other criteria like having a Purple Heart, having served in Desert Storm or Vietnam, having been a former prisoner of war, etc. So the answer is no. Not every veteran is eligible for VA healthcare. It is now a means tested program. So, and the income limits are geographically based. So for veterans who live here in Contra Costa County, the income level is much higher than it would be for veterans who live, say, in Stanislaus County. So but the best thing you can do as a veteran is reach out to a county veteran service office and inquire as to your eligibility for VA healthcare because that's a very important resource, and that's what Debbie and Noga were mentioning is really finding these resources in your community so you can stay in your community and continue to age. I would imagine that aging comes with a desire to want to connect with others who are experiencing that same type. I just was thinking that it's not something you can relate to other people because no one else has experienced it unless you are aging. So how how important is it for veterans to connect with or not just veterans, people who are aging, to connect with others who are going through these same experiences of maybe having some loss of physical ability or loss of mental ability?
Well, I think it's extremely important, but that's where the challenge comes. Because oftentimes when we are aging, we cannot get out and connect. And sometimes right now there's a challenge for everyone needs to have technology. Not everyone has the ability to have that technology to connect if they're not physically able to go to a senior center or something like that. And also, I do want to mention what I find also is that when there's hearing loss, that's an increased challenge in trying to communicate, or a loss of eyesight, or perhaps really not feeling well, feeling weak, feeling tired. And so that's, again, those are all challenges to connect with others, and perhaps sometimes to go inward and to give up on those connections. And so that's where the challenge is. And I'm glad that we're going to talk about it in the next two or three segments, because we're building onto the importance of where are the resources, where's the support, and how to stay connected. So it's all works together. Yeah.
And I think we're doing a better job of that now, recognizing that. How do we connect? Not just there is some digital divide, but we have a lot more senior programming happening on Zoom right now as a result of COVID. Um, there's an organization called Covia that does 100 different telephone or web-based senior center type meetings that anyone can access anywhere 365 days a year. They do 100 different programs per week. So there are ways that we are getting better as service providers to facilitate these connections, because it is so vital to our mental health, our physical health, and our spiritual health to be connected to others who are experiencing similar things as we are.
We just have about 2 minutes left in this segment. And thank you both so much for being a part of this show. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in, and for our guests, for our audience member who asked that question. Noga and Debbie, what do you think is the most important, or if not the most important, the very first resource that a veteran who is aging should reach out to? Tough question, maybe.
I find that when I can go to a home, or I can go to a facility or assisted living or wherever, and gather veteran volunteers from the community, and gather if it's bedside or perhaps in the recliner, wherever it may be, gather veterans of all the different generations, and honor a veteran that may be in that facility. I see such connection and such storytelling and such beautiful camaraderie. And I think that's what, as Debbie has mentioned, that's essential.
Thank
There are
you.
veterans that have gone very much inward, but then with that really just blossom in community. So
Thank you. Debbie, we just have a few seconds, but is there a resource that you feel is most important for a veteran to reach out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think local veterans programs have the greatest knowledge of what the resources are in that local community. And also, if you're in the state of California, 800-510-2020 is information and assistance for anyone who's aging, and they can connect you to your local veterans programs if you don't have that information.
Thank you both. When we come back, we will continue with this conversation, this very important conversation with our panel. First, we want to take a look at Army veteran and 3-time Grammy Award winner, John Prine, and his song about growing old.
We had an apartment in the city. Me and Loretta like living there. Well, it'd been years since the kids had grown a life of their own, left us alone. John and Linda live in Omaha, and Joe is somewhere on the road. We lost Davy in the Korean War, and I still don't know what for. Don't matter anymore. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there. Hello.
Welcome back. Want to be a part of our conversation? Call us at 925-313-1170. You can send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1, or email us at veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. We're going to have a veteran and financial planner, Dan Canavas, join us. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Erin, thanks for having me.
So we know you yourself are a veteran, so we definitely thank you for your service, and we'd like to get right into conversation with you because you also provide a lot of knowledge that can be helpful for our audience today. So wanted to start with, what do you feel is the most important thing a veteran can do to prepare for their later years?
That's a great question, Erin. The most important thing that a veteran can do to prepare for their later years is to start as early as possible. It's one of these things that, like so many things in life, your your age and your later years can creep up on you, and it happens suddenly, whether it's approaching retirement, or even later in your golden years. The sooner you start planning for it, the sooner you start implementing different aspects of that plan, the better the outcome is going to be, and the better the result is going to be in terms of ultimately all the people who need to be involved in the plan, whether it's family, advisors, other associates you might have.
So speaking of, unfortunately, if you do find a veteran that hasn't started, relatively so early, and they're getting there and a little late in the game, and then they bring their family on board to try to wrangle things in, what might be some resources for them to still plan, but maybe not have had so much lead time?
Absolutely. So, as a financial planner, I kind of serve for my clients as a quarterback for their financial lives, but I am not an expert in every single realm. So, for estate planning, for example, I'm often bringing in and referring to an estate planning attorney that will help advise and really get together the documents and the plan necessary for somebody to plan for those later years and eventually for when they pass on. Uh, Taking into account the dynamics with family, friends, heirs, and things like that.
Okay. Um, oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Dan. One of the things that you mentioned there is documents. What kind of documents should a veteran be focused on in preparing for aging? What kind of things are very important to have on hand?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, we've all heard of a will, right? That is a very, very important document and ultimately is going to be part of anyone's financial planning for their later years. It can be a simple document. At its core, it's a simple document, but ultimately, it's something that everybody should think through and make sure that they have. And that can be done if the veteran feels confident, certainly can be done on their own. There's even free online services that offer it nowadays, or you can do it in conjunction with an attorney or some other advisor that's capable of doing it. There's also thinking about if you own property in California, oftentimes it makes sense to have a trust as well, a living trust, revocable trust set up. And so that's something that typically will be complex enough that you'll need an estate planning attorney to help you with that. But it helps take care of a lot of different questions about the disposition of your assets and also shielding them potentially from probate and things like that. And finally, I want to talk about healthcare as well. So advanced healthcare directives are very important. Um, that give they'll say they'll have aspects of them. They'll say under these conditions, if I'm unable to make a decision, do not resuscitate me under these conditions, healthcare conditions, or they'll appoint somebody as a medical proxy if the veteran's unable to make decisions for themselves. Again, having these documents set up early and thinking about who you want to serve in these capacities is very important and helps make everything easier for those who are caring for you as you age.
That's a very good information to share. I know that it's prompted questions from our audience, so we'd like to get a chance to address one of our questions from viewers, and we want to welcome more comments and questions if you have them. So thank you, viewers that are sending in some meaningful questions for us. But does a reverse mortgage make sense for a veteran in your opinion?
That's a great question, and my answer might seem a little bit of a cop out, but it's the answer that I would give to any one of my clients is that it depends on anybody's given situation. Any competent financial planner will understand what your goals are, what your situation is, financial situation, personal situation, and then make a recommendation based on that. And so, for some people, it might be the right strategy for their financial lives, and for other people, it wouldn't be. So, I I certainly couldn't give that recommendation blanket to all veterans. It'd have to be something that you discuss with someone who's knowledgeable about it and understands financial planning well, and apply to your specific situation.
So you kind of touched upon the healthcare aspect earlier, and something that we'd like to just kind of maybe get your insight on too is when should people think about long term care insurance?
Now,
That's
Like yesterday. Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, that's one thing I've seen in this line of work is just how expensive it is to really get old. And when someone reaches the point of needing care, it's upwards of $10,000, $11,000 a month for care in the Bay Area here. So, and most people have an income around that time of their life of maybe $4,500 a month. So that's a very good question. I would imagine that long-term care insurance, if not if they don't have five children to help take care of them, it's going to be the only way that some people are going to be able to afford.
So Nathan, you bring up a good point. It does come down to the individual situation, but if you decide that it's right for you, the sooner you get it, the less expensive it tends to be because the insurance company has a longer time to invest those premiums that you're paying in, and therefore they can charge you a lower rate for that. So that's fundamentally with most insurance products. You want to insure yourself if you do want the insurance when you don't necessarily need it, and then you tend to get a better outcome for yourself that way.
I would like to bring a couple of points out. One of the things that I often ask, and I am amazed when I get the answer, is do you know where your DD 214 is? Do you have that in a safe place? And so many times they do not. And as we all know, that takes a long time to be able to get a copy. And another thing that's mentioned, and that's something that, again, we have to plan for, is what happens when you die? Do you know about your burial benefits? Have you thought about it? Have you talked about it with your family? Do you want to be buried in the national cemetery or so forth and so on? But that's a conversation that's hard to talk about. But when it's all tucked in and it's all planned, then it's much more peaceful. So those two things in addition, I always try to ask when you do make those plans.
And I would just also add that we should be thinking about how we want our life to be at all times. So, in the same way that we plan for a vacation, we should plan for our retirement. We should plan for the joy that we want to have in our life, as well as the decisions we want made if we lose the capacity to do things. So, to the extent that we want to be in control of our lives, we should be planning every day for our lives the same way, no matter where it is in the age spectrum. So, I think it's super important to take the ugliness away from talking about end of life decisions and start planning for all of that so that when times come hard, we are prepared for that. And that's the best way we can control our outcomes.
Couldn't agree more.
I know that many people think about leaving a legacy, and I know that there's certain things that a person can do to do that, certain documents and such. But if a person wants to ensure that they leave a legacy, but it wants to ensure that they or their spouse are well prepared financially, what would you recommend to them, Dan?
So that is a great question. There's a lot of different ways to do it depending on a veteran's level of wealth and their level of sophistication. Generally, you can, the easiest way to do it for most people, and what applies to most people, is you designate beneficiaries on different accounts you might have that will transfer on death, be it an IRA or 401k or even a bank account or something along those lines. That is probably the most easily overlooked and also simultaneously easily solved estate planning issue that's out there. Just making sure that accounts are titled correctly and the beneficiaries are listed correctly. And so that's one way you can retain control of certain assets. That's just really easy. They remain in your name, titled to you, but still make sure that they go to where you want them to go. Assuming the account allows, that particular type of account allows you to have that beneficiary designation. Beyond that, again, the will, setting up trusts, things like that are ways to make sure that your legacy is expressed and happens the way you want it to. And again, it takes planning. The wealthier you are, the more planning also tends to take, and the more understanding of the law it tends to take. So again, consulting a competent professional on this tends to be something that's very, very helpful, really at all levels, but especially if you are a wealthier veteran who's aging.
Thank you so much, Dan. I've got a big question. We've got 2 minutes to talk about it. and this is a question I think I see very often in this office. The person doesn't want to think or talk about aging because they're afraid that by starting to talk about it, it's going to happen. It's almost like talking about death. It's like planning for death. I don't want to talk about death because it's going to happen. What do you say to people in that mindset to help them through that place of fear? No guy, no, you see people every day in this situation.
Well, it's actually what Dan and Debbie had both said. If we plan ahead, if we make sure that this is really what we want, then we will be able to enjoy this time. We'll be able to actually, even when we lose control, we will be able to have that control because we have put it all in place. And there's many scenarios, and the scenarios of planning and tucking it all in and having those supports and those that you have designated to make those decisions for you in place makes all the difference in the world. So you can actually enjoy your day to day. So you're more in control. That's what I try to say. When you feel like, well, I'm going to lose control. Actually, no, you're gaining control. Every single plan that you make ahead, you're gaining that control. So.
And there's also some beauty in aging that we can point out to folks. And we live in an ageist society, so it's not typically the place we go. But you can buy fancy cars and fancy houses and go on trips and do all that fun stuff, but you cannot buy life experience and wisdom. And older adults have that in troves, and they're just a treasure chest full of it. And so being able to say, how do we plan and how do we capitalize and extract from you the gift that you have of your aging? I think those coupled together make it so that we can have those conversations and should.
Well, we thank you guys for the information that you shared with us. Very valid points, and I'm sure our audience is getting well informed this evening. When we return, the panel will discuss the importance of staying connected. But first, let's hear a little bit more from the great John Prine.
Me and Loretta, we don't talk much more. She sits and stares through the back door screen. And all the news just repeats itself like some forgotten dream that we've both seen. Someday I'll go and call up Rudy. We work together at the factory. What could I say if he asked what's new? Nothing, what's with you? Nothing much to do. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there.
Welcome back. We're talking about aging with pride. We want to welcome you to contact us with your questions. Call us at 925-313-1170. Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. This segment, we want to talk about the social aspect of aging with pride. And for that, we are adding to our panel Dick Ingram, the coordinator of the Third Thursday Lunch Group, Dan Helix, retired two-star General Army veteran, Mark Steinberg, commander of VFW Post 1525, and Mickey Ganitch, World War II veteran and Pearl Harbor survivor. We actually had the honor of having Mickey on the show on his 100th birthday. I think we have a video of that.
Well, we're honored to have you, Mickey, and you said November 18th, so that would make this your 100th birthday. Is that right, sir?
That's right.
Well, you know what? We got a special surprise for you tonight, Mickey, so happy birthday to you.
Wow.
You get to make a wish.
And look at that. The candle's actually lit there, Mickey. I don't know if the camera can see it, but it's still lit.
I see it.
All right.
Happy birthday, sir.
Happy birthday.
Stick around. We'll cut that at the bar down the road. Okay.
All right, what a cool event that was, Mickey. Thanks so much for coming back, and what a fun show it was to celebrate your 100th birthday. But we've got everyone now, all of our guests on for this third conversation. So welcome everyone, and I'd like to get us talking about this social aspect of aging. And I know that Dan Helix and Dick Ingram, you both belong to the Third Thursday Lunch Group. Tell us a little bit about the Third Thursday Group, Dan.
I think Dick Ingram is the one that probably ought to start because he's been there for a long time. I will make a comment about it. Nathan, you were the one who introduced me to the group. I didn't know about it, and so at your invitation, as the County Veteran Service Officer, you're doing a good job. And I went to the meeting, and I would like to take a minute to talk about my first impression. It's not of a general nature, it's very specific, but it was most impressive. One of the features of each meeting is to, at the beginning, is to pass the microphone around, and the veterans have a self-introduction. And they do this quietly, there's no fanfare, they speak in matter-of-fact tones, there was no boasting or bragging. But I want to tell you that I was truly impressed by that self-introduction period, because what I heard was a roll call of America's military battle venues. And it starts off, I served at Pearl Harbor, Bataan, the Marshall Islands, Guadalcanal, Omaha Beach, Bastogne, the Battle of the Bulge, Port Chop Hill, Uvalde, Quezon, the Edgerang Valley, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm. And I sat there and I looked at this group of older guys, and I was so proud to be a part of them because I knew we had something in common. We all knew the sound of angry metal. And I was very happy to be there. And I want to tell you that Dick Ingram was the leader of the group when I was there. Most impressive man, and I just feel honored to be in that company. And I think as far as the aging goes, stay involved, but be involved with groups like this, where you have something in common and you can find the opportunity to continue to serve.
Well, thank you for that. That's actually very exciting to hear. And you mentioned Dick Ingram, and he's on with us today. Did you have anything that you'd like to share with us, Dick?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that the previous panel was talking about was time. And there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that Warren Buffett is now a multi-billionaire because he planned early. He didn't really get his wealth until about he was 90. No, he was 65. But he still continued to plan properly. And so planning is a big aspect of how to age properly. Now, turning to the Veterans Group, the reason I think it's worthwhile to keep that group going is because the interaction of the participants. Jerry Whiting, who is not with us tonight, but he was the real instigator of a decent program where everybody got to speak. And so it turned out that he was the one that he started out as a historian when it started out with the 5 veterans, POWs, when they were meeting over in the greenery, a little golf course restaurant over there. And then we moved eventually. But he kept it going to the point where he has a program that's pretty well defined. And then he also has the knack of giving an audition to those who want to make comments. And it's those comments that are quite revealing. everybody has a different story to tell with their lives. But when you hear those stories, you got a real sense that these people were dedicated. They went into the service for one of two reasons. I personally was drafted and wound up meeting the Russians on the Elbe River over in Germany. And then because we'd had combat, we were designated to make the part of the force for the invasion of Japan in Tokyo Bay. We were about ready to go over there, and then Harry Truman dropped the bomb. So instead of marching down Tokyo streets, we marched down San Francisco streets. And so,
Dick, I want to ask you: is this Third Thursday group an opportunity where veterans can share these kind of stories
well,
about
that's what we do.
themselves? Is
That's
this
what we
important
do.
for veterans to come together and share about their military experiences?
Well, I'm not sure it's completely that. I think they like to talk to other things other than military. But military seems to be the nucleus, the glue, the adhesive that binds us together. We're not all of us are veterans. Some are friends of veterans in the group, but we all have a deep respect for those who served, and we have high-ranking people like Dan, who's a 2-star. We got another 1-star in the group, and then we have regular regular yeoman and infantrymen like me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
we,
much, Dick.
Yeah, we
Hey,
definitely appreciate you sharing and just how important the social aspect is for our veterans. And so when we come back on our next segment, we're going to talk about continuing to serve. We'd love to hear more from Mickey and Mark as well in that segment. But first, we want to hear more from John Prine one last time.
Okay.
So if you're walking down the street sometime, spot some hollow ancient eyes, please don't just pass them by and stare, as if you didn't care. Say hello in there.
So, welcome back. The last thing we want to discuss tonight is perhaps the most important, and that's about finding purpose, helping others, and continuing to serve, things that are very near and dear to my heart. I don't think we can find a better example than our own Mickey Ganitch. Take a look at this video of him with President Trump.
The legacy of that legendary American generation is carved deep into the stone monuments of history, across the battlefields, oceans, and harrowing skies of Europe and the Pacific throughout the war. One great battle cry could be heard by American friends and foes alike. Remember Pearl Harbor. Have you heard that before a couple of times? Remember Pearl Harbor.
Remember Pearl Harbor as we go to meet the foe. Just remember Pearl Harbor as we did the Alamo. We shall always remember how they died for liberty. Just remember Pearl Harbor and go on to victory.
Yeah. What can I say? Wow, that was good. He's a very shy person, too. And a great football player.
Oh, how we just love being able to celebrate our own Mickey Ganitch in so many different ways. So you guys were able to see his birthday clip earlier, and he's made an impression on the President of the United States. So Mickey, we welcome you back to the show, and we want to ask you, what inspires you to continue to serve in the way that you do? You just bring so much joy, to anybody that you come across. What inspires you?
I joined the Navy in January 1941 there, and it wasn't long after that there that a couple of different people advised me about this or that there and saw that I needed some help. Well, they helped me so many times there during the services there that I just dedicated myself to help others because it means so much for a person their a chance to improve themselves there and just to think about people helping each other. So I dedicated myself to help others. That's why I'm a volunteer at so many. Now, in fact, I'm not even sure how many hours. I know I'm over 10,000 hours volunteering here. But veterans are the most important, and helping each other is so important to each other there because, in other words, you're watching each other's back. So you think about helping each other's, and the others are going to help you. That's why I dedicated myself to help others. And
Mickey, I want to interrupt you because when you were on the show in November, one thing you said, the secret to living is to keep breathing. So I want to ask you,
Yeah.
and I want to bring Mark into this conversation too. So either you or Mark, if you keep your body alive by breathing, how do you keep your mind alive?
By staying active.
Well,
You want to stay active. You want to, one of the things about the VFW is, as we say, we're still serving. We've dedicated ourselves to helping other veterans. When we got back from Vietnam, things weren't that great, but they have improved. And so you just need to stay active. And by doing that, helping others, it keeps the mind going. That's one of the key things. And I'm one of the youngsters on this little panel here, but
Yeah, you are. You're probably in your 60s, Mark. So let's hear from the
not quite.
100-year-old.
I'm 72.
Mickey, Mickey, you're a part of veterans organizations, just like Mark's a part of the VFW. And Dan and Dick, I'll bring you into this conversation too. Would you agree with that? Do you think that staying active and continuing to serve is a part of how you keep your mind alive?
oh, yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
What you need to do is think in these terms: use it or lose it. And really quick to lose it unless you stay active. I'm hobbling around at age 96, but I still try to stay active in my mind. And that's important because if you don't, you're going downhill very quickly. And so I keep my mind occupied. I do a lot of emails. My wife says I'm married to this damn thing. So it's one of those circumstances, but it keeps me connected, and that's the main thing. I'm able to talk to my friends. I'm able to talk to my siblings and grandchildren, and it's use it or lose it. Very simple.
I also attend the Third Thursdays, and I think it's great. I'm the son of a World War II veteran, Normandy and Battle of the Bulge, and just listening to the guys, during the luncheons, just makes me feel like I have a lot of dads out there, and
Yeah.
it's a
I
wonderful thing.
I try to keep myself busy there. I'm a public speaker. I speak to schools, clubs, colleges. Anybody wants to listen to them. I drive my own car. I'm a public speaker, and that keeps me busy. And drive my own car. People think, gee, you're driving your own car? Sure, I'm driving my own car. In fact, I just renewed my driver's license for 5 years here. And I'll renew it again another 5 years here. When I get around 110 or so, maybe I'll slow down a little bit there.
When
But
we had our last show that Mickey was a guest on, he drove his wife, and he drove his daughter to the show.
I believe he also said he volunteers to drive other veterans to their appointments as well.
Right. Dan Helix, I want to ask. Oh, go ahead, Mickey.
Do it while I'm still young.
I want to ask about the John Prine video talked about saying hello in there. And I think that has to do with not just quickly moving past people who are of older age and finding a way to connect with them, to have conversations with them. What does that song mean to you, or what does that mean to you, Dan?
Well, I'd like to go to the earlier question. I read every day and I'm writing, and my project is to build a Veterans Library at the Veterans Center in Concord. I donated the first 10 boxes of books, another 10 boxes to follow, and I'm raising money so that we can have chairs and lamps and a brand new state-of-the-art coffee urn and other things. And I'm committed to raise 100,000 for that library so it can be first class, so that veterans will have a place to go and visit and to have some recreation. And so I think that's one of the things that I'm committed to, and it's an element of service.
He's talking about the Concord Veterans Hall, which was built in 1929 for World War I veterans, and so he's helping us greatly that we have a space, for veterans to come in and just be able to hang out with other veterans. And Jerry Hudson, the president of the Veterans Hall, I'm the treasurer, so I got to check.
Right.
And he's already starting to catalog all those books. So
very important veterans memorial buildings. People see me on the street, they might ask me, hey, how are the Oakland A's playing? What's a good way for someone to connect with you? What's a good question? I'm hearing from Dan Helix. It might be, hey, what book are you reading? Or what's your favorite book right now? But Dick, if someone passes you by on the street, what might be something that they might ask you to connect with you? We've got about 30 seconds. So.
You talking to me?
Yes, Dick, go ahead.
Well, I don't get that question very often because I'm still hobbling around. But if somebody did, and then I think the question is, what would they ask me about a veteran's reading? Is that right? Was that the question?
Well, what might someone ask you to just find a way to have a conversation with you? What might be something you might want to talk about? We only have about a few seconds, Dick. So.
Well, I'm a rail buff, a train buff. So we'd like to talk about railroads. And then, but most veterans are very reticent about speaking about their military history. And so you really have to extract the information if you want to have a conversation. So I don't initiate the conversation. I'd be glad to respond to it, but I'm not an instigator of it.
Got it. So you just need someone to bring it up, and then it goes from there.
I would rather talk about them, not me.
Well, thank you so much for your contribution. This was such a great discussion today. I want to thank our panel for coming in today. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation on aging. Later in the show, we'll show a list of resources to help you in your effort to age with pride. Now we invite you to watch a special Veterans Voices interview that I did with Hollywood producer and author Devon Franklin.
Thank you for coming on board, and let's just have a conversation about why you're here today and how you have been able to really have such a major impact and influence. The main thing here is that our connection to you was through your book, The Truth About Men,
yes,
which I had the pleasure of reading several months ago. And in reading your book, there were so many things that just resonated. And it wasn't just about your focal area of just men, but it really spoke to me as a military service member who has had so many different experiences with the family life aspect of the military. We focus so much on the service member themselves, but really there's the family and the support and the community behind them that allows us to do what we do as service members. But before I get started, let's hear from you. Let's hear a little bit about you. We know you're a Bay Area native, but tell us a little bit more about what you've got going on.
Yeah, from the Bay Area, my family is up there. I came down to Los Angeles at 18 years old to go to USC. I majored in business, minored in film. The goal was always to, make it in Hollywood. And, I've been in Hollywood now for 24 years. I run my own company called Franklin Entertainment. I deal with Paramount. And, along the way, I've written multiple books, on many different subjects. The Truth About Men is the latest book because I felt like, as men, we got to start doing our work. And two, I wanted women to have much more information about us because I think so often when it comes to self-help, it's always geared more towards, what women need to do, but not always what we as men need to do. So this book was written, from that vantage point. Okay, men, here's how we can do our work. But then also women, here's the information you need to know that will be very helpful to you in your dealings with men.
And I can certainly appreciate that, not just seeing it from the women's perspective, but just from the humility and the vulnerability that comes with that. So that's one area that I'd like to highlight, because I read on, we'll start with the page number 60. So you talked about the acceptance comes with vulnerability and responsibility. It's terrifying for me to admit that there's something inside of us waging war against the man we aspire to be. So with vulnerability and transparency, why do you think there is such that struggle for men to really address that part of who they are?
Well, I think that there's just a lack of conversation. I think as men, we're kind of conditioned to not talk, to not communicate. So what happens, one of the byproducts of that is we have these feelings, but we don't know how to process them. We don't know how to deal with them. So we suppress them. So when anything we suppress, I believe, is negative. It's going to get expressed in a negative way. So anything that we're suppressing, it's going to come out in a way that's usually detrimental. Anything that we're in denial about, we empower to destroy us. So it's very hard to come to grips. There are things inside of us that we don't like. There are ideas, there are thoughts, there are feelings that don't represent the men we want to be. That's a very hard thing to just come into an acceptance of, yes, this is here, or I feel this way. But the key to get over that feeling is to accept it, is to admit, okay, it's here. Now, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. Let me tell you, you hit home on that, because so as military service members, and this is both men and women alike, but specifically with our male service members, we're exposed to different experiences and things that happen in combat and even outside of combat that we may not want to speak about. I know for me, I deployed 2 years ago and had a very serious, significant situation happen. And it wasn't until a year later that I was really able to kind of face some of those things that went on. So, a lot of those emotions and things are buried. And unless you're also a service member or somebody kind of has been through those similar situations, they tend to be hard to talk about. But one thing that I liked what you said was the fact that when you identify that that is something that truly does bother you, it's something that you contend with, you admit it, and then you're able to press on and get the proper healing and wholeness that you're seeking. That's so important. And I find that in our service, I see a lot of men that struggle with that. It's like they know it's there. They don't necessarily want to admit that it's there, and then they don't necessarily seek the help that is necessary. So, and you had kind of touched on the whole honesty portion too. And so you also mentioned that honesty is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. So I just wanted to see if you can kind of elaborate on that concept, as far as honesty being not a weakness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually very easy to not be honest. That's easy. That's very easy. Yeah. To not speak what you feel, to not be honest, to not express ourselves. I think that's super easy to do. I think that honesty requires a lot more strength, because it requires the strength of acknowledgement, the strength of acceptance, and also the strength of communicating. Like it really requires, it's a courageous act to say, hey, as a man, I don't know, there's something going on. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know why I feel this way, or say these things, because too often we don't understand that the price that we pay for not communicating, for not being honest, it's not just the damage it does to us.
Right.
But it's the damage that we inflict on others.
We talk about forgiveness, right? And so in your book, you mentioned forgiving yourself doesn't mean you absolve yourself of the remorse you feel when you acted out of character. No, when you forgive yourself, you acknowledge what you did, and the remorse you can feel serve as a powerful catalyst to helping. So that way you can make your commitment every day to become a much better person. So that forgiveness piece of yourself, I see that as a struggle for a lot of people, especially when you're in a military setting and you're being asked to do things that you wouldn't maybe ordinarily do, but you're doing it in defense of your country and for the freedoms of all your fellow citizens. So that forgiveness of self is a very sensitive piece for a lot of military members. Just kind of in your thought processes or your experience, forgiving yourself, really what does that look like?
Yeah, forgiving ourselves looks like, I mean, in my day job, I'm a producer. So, I make movies, and And so I'll use a movie analogy, which is when I forgive myself, like, so there's this old adage about forgive and forget.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. When we do something that really affects us emotionally, or if something was done to us that really had a negative emotional impact on us, we never forget that. That's
Right.
we can't just magically wipe that from our memory. It's just not even a practical thing to do, nor do I think it may be even healthy to pursue that. However, the forgiveness piece means I stop replaying the event to the degree that it is impacting my ability to live in the present and prepare for my future.
Yes.
That to me is how I unpack forgiveness. I don't forget the times when I was wrong, the things I did I'm not proud of, the times I said things that I wish I could take back. I don't forget that. But I no longer replay those moments to the degree where they're impacting my ability to live in the present and plan for the future. Really important. And why I say that in the book is that we got to turn things that are negative and transform them into something positive. So if I feel remorse, all right, I can't go back to my past and change it. I wish I could. I can't. It's done. It's done. It's done. I can never go back and change that picture.
Yeah.
Once the picture is taken, it's taken. So I can look at that picture all day. I could wish that picture was different, but it's not. It happened. So what can I do? I can take how I feel about that and do something positive. So what does that look like? I can make the decision to, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I can make the decision, when you talk about military families and whatnot, and some people in the military having to do things that, maybe that they otherwise don't feel comfortable with, but they're doing it in the honor of their country. Here's what can be really powerful. If you feel remorseful of something, but you also know that there are going to be others who are going to have the same experience, you can use your experience to help the person before they get to that experience and help them navigate after that experience. So you can take that remorse, you can take that forgiveness of self, and you can do something positive with it. So important, because if we don't channel that remorse into something positive, it becomes a weight of guilt and shame, which takes us back, which prevents us from living in the moment and never allows us to move forward to the future that is waiting for us.
Man, thank you so much. This was such a good conversation, so much wisdom coming forth that I think will be so helpful for our military and veteran communities on just how to cope and deal with, because this is a lifestyle. It's not just about the service member having a technical skill that serves to defend the country, but this is literally a lifestyle. So we are grateful for all of your knowledge and your wisdom. We thank you for your time today, and we're so grateful that you were able to come on today and be a part of Veterans Voices. So thank you from myself and our
thank you
crew.
for having me. And obviously, I know it goes without saying, but it is worth it to say thank you for your service. Thank you for all of those that have put in so much time and energy and so much of your lives into what you do. And we're incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the show tonight. We hope our discussion has inspired you to start your path to aging with pride. Here are some resources that can help. To access veterans advocates, contact a county veterans service officer at nacvso.org or call 844-SERVE-VET. The Veterans of Foreign Wars provide opportunities to connect with veterans across the country. Find them at vfw.org. The American Legion is another excellent place to find social activities as well as ways to help your community. Reach them at legion.org. And the Vietnam Veterans of Diablo Valley welcome Vietnam veterans to be a part of the good work they do. You can find them at vietnamvetsdiablovalley.org, vnvdv.org. Want to talk with like-minded veterans who can also help with veterans benefits? Join the Coffee and Conversation virtual meetup every Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Email hmoncada292@contracosta.edu or maurice.delmer@va.gov and ask for your invitation. Veterans Voices is brought to you in part by contributions from the 2020 census. Now more than ever, it is important for veterans to stand up and be counted. The Veterans Affordable Home Program, serving those who have served us, ensuring the American dream for our veterans. The Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation, dedicated to helping veterans near you. And a generous contribution from Ken and Pat Rochelle. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Our next show will air on Monday, September 14th at 7 p.m. We will ask the question, where were you on 9/11? Be sure to tune in. To all of our veterans and their families, thanks for watching and have a great evening.